everyone, it's the Geeks Out Podcast. I'm Kevin Gilligan. We're back. I know it has been a hot minute since we have been around. Life happens, but life has also found a way, and we're back. We've got lots coming up this year, so hopefully a little more consistent with podcasts coming out. But things are busy because, guys, it's the 10-year anniversary of FlameCon. That's right. It's the 10th year of FlameCon this year. It's happening August 17th and 18th at the Times Square Sheraton, which is kind of a misnomer. It's not really Times Square. It's north of Times Square, but you got to sell to the tourists. But we've made our big announcement. Tickets are on sale right now. We have some great special guests already lined up. We've got Molly Knox Ostertag, who is the New York Times bestselling graphic novel author and illustrator of The Deep Dark. She's also from the Witch Boy trilogy, The Witch Boy, which is also in development by Netflix. She is an amazing artist and writer, and is also married to fellow writer and artist Andy Stevenson. So we're excited to have Molly back. It's been a while since she's been at FlameCon. We also, for our Fireball, our official FlameCon after party, we have from season 16 of RuPaul's Drag Race, we have the cosplay queen herself, Megami, who is going to be hosting and performing, and is going to be a special guest at FlameCon all weekend. So lots that are happening, but what you're here for, most importantly, right now, in this very moment, we have a new episode of the Geeks Out Podcast. Joining me today, longtime friend, longtime listener, and also has been a special guest on the podcast in the long ago, which is anything pre-pandemic, honestly. They are the host of Slayer Fest podcast, and honestly, you don't want to go into against them in any Buffy trivia. Honestly, you're just not going to come out good on the other end. We have Ian Carlos Crawford joining us. We're going to be talking about all the Marvel news happening this week with Deadpool and Wolverine, Queer X-Men 97. And if you are playing a video game right now, you yourself might be queer right now, according to a new study. So we have all these stories and more in this episode of the Geeks Out Podcast. Ian, how's it going, friend?
Oh, good. How are you? Hi.
I'm doing all right. It has been too long.
Yes. I when you said 10-year anniversary of FlameCon, I was like, that can't possibly be right, because I was there for the first two, and Lord, we are old, Kevin.
No kidding. My body is definitely telling me how old I am. So yeah. I definitely had my back blown out in not a good way. So don't get old, friends. Don't get old.
At least we're still cute.
Hey, that's it. I'm gonna look good, but I'm gonna feel terrible though.
Yes.
So Ian, you've got the Slayer Fest. So Ian, if to catch people up, so Ian was very involved with Geeks Out and FlameCon, especially in the beginning. He used to go by Twitter, and it wasn't a human cesspool. It was a cesspool.
Still, yeah. Don't oversell it, but it wasn't as bad as it is.
It wasn't as bad. Yeah. But you've been doing Slayer Fest. You've had some live shows. It's been great. It's been great. Especially some of the guests that you've had on there. So, yeah. In fact,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, in fact, our very own president, Nick Gattal, is a frequent guest on your show. So
they are now a co-host for our Angel coverage. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And yeah, no, it's like I've been doing the podcast for, I think, almost 10 years now too, because I think I started it when I was at the end of my first time living here. And it started on, we started putting it on Geeks Out when it first started.
Yeah.
And I very much am always in debt to Geeks Out for letting me do that. And this year, I am determined. I told Nick, I was like, make sure my ass isn't lazy because I do want to try to submit for a panel. Every year, I'm like, ooh, this year I'm going to do it again. And then I forget. And then the deadline passed. And I'm like, oh, well, next year I'll do it. And then.
Well, speaking of, I mean, applications are going to open up on March 1st. So starting March 1st, you can go to flamecon.org and start submitting those program ideas. So.
I'm literally putting a note in my notes app right now, March 1st.
Yes. No, yeah. I mean, your podcast, I think it was back before we got the new website, because we had the old website and then it crashed hard. And you know, we lost a lot of good content back then.
I'll say RIP all the content. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's just dive right into some big openings, shall we? Yeah. The cool waters of these big openings. So for my big opening, this has been teased. I don't know, like maybe as long as FlameCon has been around. I don't know. It feels that way. So Marvel is doing Fantastic Four, and they finally have revealed the cast of the Fantastic Four family. So we have Pedro Pascal, who is going to be playing Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. Vanessa Kirby, who will be Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman. Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, Human Torch. And Evan Moss, I am terrible with names. I want to say it's Nope.
I've never heard it said out loud, so I can't help you. I'm sorry.
I haven't either. Actually, you know what? I probably have, but it was during the Emmys, and it was always like, you know. Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar, Pedro Pascal, of course, from The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. Vanessa Kirby, she has most recently been in the Mission Impossible movies as kind of like this sort of femme fatale character. Joseph Quinn just blew up last year with Stranger Things as Eddie. And Evan, he's a character actor who's been in a ton. Most recently, he's been on The Bear on FX, but he was also on Nosferatu, which was the series based on Stephen King's son, Joe Hill's book Nosferatu, that had Zachary Quinto in it. So yeah, I'm not mad at this cast.
No, and so I only recently did you watch Punisher, the Netflix Punisher?
Yes. Did I watch both seasons? I don't know if
I only watched season 1.
Okay.
But he's also plays the guy that's like his right-hand man in that series.
Oh, yes.
Which is weird, right? Because now we are making those shows canon, so it's whatever. Though truly whatever. Like Marvel's so big at this point, I feel like it's bound to happen, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we are in the age of the multiverse, so they may, whatever MacGuffin of just like, oh, the Fantastic Four are coming in from another universe, and now true. It's all together. Who knows? Or maybe they're gonna, say that, oh, well, that was just a variant of,
right? Or just fucking blow past it, right? Like,
yeah,
sure,
might as well. I mean, Josh Brolin's been 2 different characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so why not?
And so is Alfre Woodard, I think. I think she's the person that played someone in Luke Cage and in Civil War, right? Wasn't that her?
Yes, she was just an average citizen, I believe, but like she was like a mother of someone who died in Civil War. And then in Luke Cage, she was Mariah. And she was, if you have not seen her in that, she is fucking amazing. So, that was a good series. That whole Defenders minus Iron Fist and the actual Defenders mini,
right? Yes,
was really solid for the most part. So,
I agree. I didn't see the second season of Punisher or the third season of Daredevil, but overall, I still think of those shows fondly, and I feel like the casting was really good too.
Yeah. What is in your big opening, Ian?
I'm really excited for Deadpool and Wolverine. My only gripe is for me, I'm like, just show me Wolverine. We've seen the leaked photos. Show me them interacting. But I get it's like the first trailer. It's kind of a teaser. I've always been a big X-Men gal.
We're getting just the tip of the claw.
Yes, and X-Men is what got me into comics. Like I remember, I don't know if you remember the old arcade game, right? From when we were kids. Like when we would go down the shore in Jersey, I would look for that in every arcade, and it was the only game I'd ever beat in an arcade. Like I never completed a game. That was the only one I ever did. I loved it. And as a kid, I just thought it was a video game until I was like, wait, there's an X-Men cartoon based on that video game. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is a comic book. And that's what like got me to where I am today. So I'm excited about that. But even more so, X-Men 97. Oh. I like Kevin, when they play the X-Men animated series theme song in that trailer, slightly remixed, I like teared up. I was just so happy and excited.
I remember I got that's the special, video cassette from Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut, yes. Same.
Yeah. I have like fond memories of that series. And like there's a little bit of nod that we've seen like with the images that we've seen from Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine of Wolverine and his costume and the sort of like the classic yellow. So we've got a little bit about that. There's some cheekiness, little. I don't think that anyone was expecting the mention of pegging in the first trailer.
Yes.
As long as they're sticking to their roots,
I feel like people get a little tired of Deadpool, and I get it, but I do think Ryan Reynolds is just so good as him. And like, it's like one of those things where like he perfectly captures that character like immediately in Deadpool 1. There's not like a grace period of like, well, this is pretty rocky. It's like he is immediately that character, and that character feels fully formed immediately. So I do really appreciate that. I appreciate that Deadpool tends to attract the straight type of nerds, but like we got Negasonic Teenage Warhead and her girlfriend, like
Yukio,
and like Negasonic Teenage Warhead, like I feel like I am her. Like I just like I'm like, this is a cool goth punk teen. Like I wanted to be her, and I love that she's like flipping him off. She's like, wait a minute, I got a text. Like she's like a very like cool teen, and I like that we're getting a queer character that's allowed to be kind of an asshole. Like I love that.
It's funny, like, so both of these are very queer. Deadpool and Wolverine Deadpool is a pansexual character. A lot of the straights tend to ignore that or be like, what since when? And, we have Negasonic and Yukio, but also, I mean, I don't know if they're going to make it because the only time that we saw him was very briefly in Deadpool 2, but Shatterstar is definitely showing up in this. So, I mean, hopefully we get a queer Shatterstar, but also, we're getting that X-Men 97 also is going to be queer in that it's been said that Morph in this, rightfully so, is, I mean, going to be as identifies as non-binary, which
and right, that just makes so much sense, right? It really does. Like, and I was saying this. I'm annoyed at the people that like, ooh, we just want it to be comic accurate, and it's like, okay, tell me the comic history of Morph, because he was not a character in the comics when the cartoon came out. He wasn't added. I think I looked it up, and it was like until 2001 when the Exiles came out. Morph was not a comic book character, so he was added retroactively. And you're crying about comic accuracy, and like he was created for these cartoons. So like,
show me that you tell me that you don't read comics without telling me you don't read comics. Yeah. It's funny, like, because a lot of those people that like call out like comics are woke, or like you're ruining my childhood, we're not really fans in the first place. They just have no reading comprehension skills, which, I mean, tracks. But
yeah, I was talking about that with someone today, actually, earlier, and they were like, because I was like, what do these people get out of the X-Men? Like, shouldn't they just not like the X-Men? And my friend was like, yeah, but they just see it as a one-for-one superhero story. Like, oop, they're blowing up robots. Oop, they're like fighting superheroes. And they don't look into it really any more than literally what's in front of them is like, ooh, Storm zapping powers at a bad guy. And that's like it, which I just like, it's a pretty clear, right? Like I feel like it's not subtle. It's pretty obvious that that's what it's a metaphor. Like, I don't know.
You know, Ian, there's a lot of lead in the water. You know, it's so much. I mean, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's why Transformers was such a big like hit. Like, I want to see cars go smash them up, boom, explosion. You know, like I was a fan of the Transformers, but the movies are unwatchable because like there's no distinction between anything. Like, you know, I just can't. I will say, like, this series, like, you know, when X-Men came out, it helped open up for a generation of new comics readers and fans. It helped really open up people's eyes to what it's like for other people and what it's like to be in a marginalized group, and like it helped to sort of contextualize what's happening for a lot of marginalized people, you know, for younger people. So it's able to like put that in an easily digestible form of being like, hey, these are good people and bad things, and you know, they're different from people and people hate them for that. And there are people who are good that are like that, and there are people who are not so good that are like that. And it's the same thing with everyone, because human beings are a multi-layered onion of terribleness. You know, there's some goodness in there, but you know, we're all mostly terrible. So
I had someone like, so I posted on my podcast Instagram like, oh, like a screenshot dump of like good tweets I saw about excitement over the new series. And oh my God, like there's so many like straight people mad. It's like, what, the X-Men aren't gay. What are you talking about? Oh, you're just like stretching. Someone even said like, oh, you liberals think you're the good guys, but actually you're the bad guys in X-Men. And it's like, there is no reading of that is that. Like, I truly, I have no idea how you could make that leap, right? Like
I hope you like stretched before you made that leap, because like that is like wild. Like, wow.
Like, how could you watch that and be like, well, they're protesting against the X-Men for who they are. So like, who does that? Like, pretty clear.
Like I remember like, oh God, like, and there's always something like with comics where it's like, comics are woke now. They're ruining our, you know, superheroes. And it's like, Superman has always been who he is. He has always been an immigrant who has fought for liberty and justice for all, like the truth and justice for all. Like all means all. Like there's no like distinction with that.
Right, like it just does. Like I don't understand how people can be like, oh yeah, that means just for me, not those people. And it's like,
or you know, like, oh, Captain America is political now. He's like, he fucking punched Nazis in the 40s. We can't help it that they still exist. It just means he didn't punch him hard enough, you know?
Right, yeah. Yeah, I like you said, it's just like showing you haven't been a comic fan, because like if you had been absorbing this stuff, this content, reading the comics, even like the movies at the very base level, like I've had the showrunners from the original animated series on my podcast. They are the nicest, like liberal mom and dad. They're like as nice as you would want them to be. Yeah. And like, they even spoke about how they were so happy that queer folks could relate. Like they just wanted to tell a story about people, you know, they didn't think about it, but they were like, I guess we just had those kind of like thoughts in our head and we made it progressive without trying to do it on purpose, but it was. And like even the showrunners say that, like however many years later, like I don't know what to tell you, dude. Like if you're mad at it being woke, well then he should have been mad at it from the start. So
well, even people who are like, oh, the comics, is like, hate to break it to you, but Chris Claremont, I mean, let's, the recent, of that introduced Storm and Wolverine, like everyone's favorite Wolverine, it was explicitly, made so that it was talking about marginalized people. He explicitly made it so that he had that the X-Men original team was the whitest white that ever whited, He made it so that it was a more like it was more representational of how the world is.
I saw someone say, actually kind of like what you were saying, I forget who tweeted it, but it was like, well, if you haven't liked woke X-Men, then you only liked the like 5-year run from when they first came out when it was all white, and that's it. Then you shouldn't like any of the rest of the X-Men comics.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Chris Claremont, he initially had made it so that originally Mystique was going to be the Mystique and Destiny were going to be Nightcrawler's parents.
Yeah,
that was canon. It was going to be that was going to be how it was. But it was a different time, and he couldn't make that happen. So, but he said that was my intent. So
it's why I'm like Fabian. I don't remember how to say his last name. Nice.
I don't know.
I've read it a bunch of times as a kid, but I've never said it out loud. So I just realized I don't know how to. Apologies to him, but he has been like fighting with people on Twitter, and he was like, no, X-Men was always like this. Like, what are you talking about? I opened his tweet, Kevin, and it was like people telling him, no, it wasn't. Like, we read what you wrote. That wasn't like that. And it's like, the writer is telling you that was his intent. How could you possibly argue with that? Like,
that doesn't fit within the narrow scope of what I've allowed myself to think. Because if I think beyond that, then that means other things. And wait, maybe I think other things, and oh my God, I think I'm gay. Like that's that I have had someone who was a huge Deadpool fan and then eventually like came out because like Deadpool was like that was their in. That was how they could be like, oh, I can excuse my behavior because I'm Deadpool.
Right.
And it was like, okay, and then they're like, oh, I guess maybe I am pan. It's
all right, because Deadpool did do a lot of the flirting with other guys before he was like officially out, right? It was like he would do the flirting, but it was just a straight guy flirting.
Right. Sure. Yeah. That happens so much. Yeah. Well, let's move on. Let's get down and nerdy, shall we? It's been a while since we've collectively we have all chatted, or everyone has listened. I'm not going to go over everything that I've watched in the past several months, but I have seen some stuff. Like I watched Argylle, which was definitely a movie. I have not seen.
I wanted to see it, but I haven't heard anything good. I thought it looked like cute fun, but I have. What you said is kind of like the nicest thing I've heard said about it.
So the only thing that I will say is that there is a kind of like, I don't know if it's intentional, but maybe unintentional queerness to it, where, because you're like, oh, who is the real Agent Argylle? Because the fictional version is played by Henry Cavill, and then like his best bro is played by John Cena. And then there's like at the end, in terms of like the reveal, you're like, oh, so wait, is there like queerness between Cavill and Cena's character? Like, like it's kind of like this weird unintended, I don't know, or it maybe is intended. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of, it's very style, not a lot of substance. It was fun to see Catherine O'Hara in it. A lot of people chewing scenery. Yeah, that's about it.
Kevin, you're so polite. You're like struggling. You're like trying to say something nice, and I see your wheels turning of like, what nice thing can I say?
I didn't pay for it. So yeah. We'll see if I actually subject myself to Madam Web, which I hear is Speaking of good, though, I did watch the full series, first season at least, Brother Son on Netflix with Michelle Yeoh, which is so good. If you haven't watched it, essentially this young guy in LA who lives with his mom, played by Michelle Yeoh, who is in med school, but is secretly taking like improv classes at the Groundlings, finds out that his family is like in the triad. And then like he gets wrapped and pulled into it to help protect the family. There's a lot of great performances in it. It's like some dark comedy. There's some very, very, very sexy men in it. So yeah, it's some very, very, very nice. I also watched I've been watching a lot of like murder mystery stuff. Like I watched Murder at the End of the World, which is really good, which is on Hulu. I do recommend it. It's from the same people that did the OA, Britt Marling. Yeah, it's sort of like the main character is described as like a Gen Z Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. But there's all sorts of like things about tech and AI. Yeah, I do recommend seeing that. Death and Other Details. It's currently on. Final episodes are coming up on Hulu. This one is very queer. Like one of the main characters is lesbian. She's sort of like the head of her company. There's a lot of sex scenes with her. It's played by Lauren Patton, who is in Fun Home on Broadway. And then she also was in the Alanis Morissette musical, Jagged Little Pill. And so that's a lot of fun. You know what was surprising was Ted, the series based on the movie.
I've been hearing good things, and it's almost made me want to check it out because I'm kind of like on that, but I've seen clips on Twitter and they have been legit funny.
It's, there is a queer character in it. I won't spoil for anyone. It's the father is a Boston father, so he is, an asshole and, bigoted. But gets called out on it a lot. There's a lot of elements of All in the Family in that way.
Okay.
Where there is that character that is like just a bigot, but like everyone around them like calls them out on it, and it still addresses things, but without ignoring the world that we live in.
Yeah, and I do think that is the better way to do that, right? With one of those characters, like, okay, if we're like they're being called and they're kind of poised as the one who is kind of wrong, it's like, okay, that's like more. I'm down with that. Yeah.
So watched Percy Jackson, which was actually pretty fun. I enjoyed it. That's on Disney Plus. I think also Hulu. Who knows what's happening with the platform? Yeah. The first season ended. It has been renewed for a second season. That along with Goosebumps has been renewed for a second season. Goosebumps, very queer. Percy Jackson, not yet, at least. Maybe in the second
Goosebumps was queer?
Oh, yeah.
That's surprising.
Yeah. Goosebumps, one of the main kids is gay and is like actively crushing on someone. Like there's a whole plot about it, which is amazing. Like it's going to be handling all sorts of things, and just it's amazing to see the success that James has had. He has been an early supporter of FlameCon. He was there in the first years, I should say. Yeah. And Tiny Onion was actually a sponsor last year of FlameCon.
And he's the sweetest sweetheart. So nice.
Really, truly, really is. Just biggest teddy bear. And what's funny is like he writes truly horrific things.
Yeah. Yes. I always appreciate that someone who can write like graphic, gross, terrible horror, and then they're like just like so nice.
Yeah. One of his new books is called The Deviant, which is very queer. And it's also like Christmas themed. It's about a Santa Claus serial killer, a serial killer who dresses as Santa Claus and leaves bodies in a very festive way, depending on how you look at it. And it has a queer main character who is sort of trying to tell this story. So, without giving away too much of the plot. So
yeah, he's so nice, and I once thanked him because my cousin, it's like second cousin, my first cousin's child. They're very like you and I posted a selfie with me and them on Twitter, and James liked it, and my cousin's kid was like, "How do you know he wrote Batman?" And I was like, I do know that, thank you. And I was like, James, thank you for making me look cool to my cousin's child.
yeah, he's got that power. So
yeah.
I've been talking a lot. Ian, what are you getting down and nerdy about?
So like, I feel like everything you mentioned, I was like, oh, I do want to watch that. Oh, or like, oh, I haven't heard of that. I guess I've been bad at watching things, but I have been watching the new Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I kind of felt about. I kept seeing people be like, no, it's actually good. Like very like random people. You know how when like it's like a friend of yours that you're like, oh, usually I do like the same shit they like, kind of like that. Like I only maybe saw 3 or 4 people say it was good, but it was people I usually like the same stuff as. I happen to throw it on because I've been looking for something, you know, it's based on the movie, which is just like a pretty straightforward action movie, whatever. And I've been looking for something that I could put on. I've been like, you know, depressed, whatever. And like when I'm super depressed, it's kind of like I prefer something I can watch, but I don't have to, it's not going to make me cry. It's not going to make me too sad. And so I was like, this might be good for that. And it is good for that. But it's also, that's like, sounds like I'm discounting it, but it's good. Like Donald Glover and Maya Erskine, I think is her name, are very, very good as Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I loved her in Pen 15. It's wild to see her go from like Pen 15 to like a like sexy action comedy. But they both have such good chemistry. And I'm only halfway through it right now, but like, you know, after the first episode, it was like this season on Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And that trailer was like a sizzle reel of famous people cameos. I didn't realize how many famous people are in the show. And it kind of, the reason it has worked for me too is because it's both a little serialized, but each episode is kind of like they have their mission for that episode. And I kind of like that. I don't like a Law and Order fully just every episode resets, but I like when there's like a little bit of both where we can get like the mission or like monster of the week, aka like Buffy, or like, but with also still progressing the characters and there's maybe a background plot. So yeah, I very much recommend it. It's really well shot. The action is really well done. Yeah, I've been like genuinely loving it. And I've texted like so many people in the last few days to be like, have you watched this? Because you should watch it. Because I always want to talk about the shit that I like with people. But yeah, that's like the most recent thing. I'm trying to think of anything else. God, I like watch a lot of horror, but even that, I'm like, what was the last horror movie I watched? Because I just like, I don't know, I don't go out much. I stay home a lot.
I've done that. Like I was looking back, like when I put Argylle, I was like, oh, what was the last thing I saw? And I was like, I've been watching a lot of like old stuff, and I was like, oh, right, like I've been like rewatching Superstore, just to, you know. Yeah. And like,
right, sometimes rewatching is easier. You're just like, you don't have to fully pay attention.
right, exactly. But also like a lot of TV hasn't been back yet. So like a lot of like regular, you know, network TV is only just slowly coming back. But I enjoyed Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I like had, I don't know, mostly enjoy it. I have like mixed feelings about it in certain regards.
Oh, you did watch all of it?
I did, yeah. Okay. I loved all of the guest stars. There's Parker Posey, there's Sarah Paulson, Ron Perlman. There's someone else.
Parker Posey, I was like, wait a minute, is that Parker? Because like I feel like she's such a like gem that like is famous to a lot of like queer folks and like people in New York, but like maybe isn't like, you know, the like capital C celebrity that she should be. But I was like very excited to see her in something like this.
I mean, shit, I remember her from Party Girl. So yeah, I mean,
Do you know what I reference a lot with her? I don't know if you've seen it. What's the guy that did Mean Girls? Mark Waters. His first movie, House of Yes. Did you ever see that?
Oh, yes. Of course I've seen House of Yes. Yes.
Oh my God. I'll be him, I'll be her, you be him. Like, I think of that a lot.
If you want to see a really fucked up movie about maybe a brother and sister that are maybe a little too close, that reenact
incest,
that maybe liken themselves and maybe cosplay a little too much about Jackie O and John F. Kennedy, this might be right up your alley. You know,
it's so weird, but like it works.
Yes. Yeah, well, we'll talk after, once you've watched the full season of Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Okay.
And we'll So, what else are you getting into?
Wait, can I mention what I've been reading? Is that jumping the gun? Okay.
No, go ahead.
I have props. So I just started this Terry Benton Walker, Blood Debts. He and I are Twitter friends. Very nice. And so my friend, one of my best friends, his husband has been deployed overseas, and this was the book we decided we were going to do a book club on. Just started it, so I'm only like 20 pages in, so I can't say much about it because I don't have much in there. But I've liked it so far. It's like a little supernatural, and it's like in New Orleans, gods meddle and magic will betray you, but this time justice will reign is kind of like the elevator pitch on the back, and it's probably going to be queer because the author is queer. I don't know how you are, Kevin. I've been like very big on like queer supernatural YA. Like that's kind of like, I love reading that shit. Even though you and I are a little bit older than the designated.
How dare you?
Just a little bit. But I love reading because I feel like YA, they just kind of let them. Yeah. There never has to be a like, ooh, like maybe this character is queer. It's like, no, the character is explicitly queer. We get that out of the way.
That's the least interesting thing about them.
Yeah, you know.
They're also like a werewolf, but like, you know.
Yeah. And like, I feel like we don't really get that in adult fiction as much. Yeah. I remember when I was pitching my fiction book that I wrote that's like adult gay fiction. And I remember like having gay agents be like, oh, adult gay fiction doesn't sell, sorry. And like, that was just it. And it's like, fuck, that is bleak. So yeah, I like reading. I feel like horror might be the only genre I read where I will read straight characters because there's just not a lot of queer horror books. But other than that, I tend to only read things that at least have a gay character in them somewhere. If it's like the character's straight but their best friend is gay or queer or whatever, then I'll be like, okay, we can fudge this. But if there's if no one's LGBTQ, I'm like, meh. Like a straight romance again, ugh, give me a break.
Yeah, they've had it good long enough, you know. Let's give the queers a chance. Nice. Well, you'll have to let us know how it's going. So let's move on. Let's talk about some strong female characters, shall we? You got some transition music, yeah.
Yeah, fancy since I last been on.
Oh, I know. Soup's fancy. So for our strong female character of the week, we got a new trailer for this lesbian thriller crime. It's just, I don't know what other words to like describe. It's Kristen Stewart Breaking Bad in a sense, you know, like she's just being like, you know what, fuck it, I am going to be unapologetically queer. I am going to make your girlfriend question her sexuality. Like that's what she's doing. Essentially the general plot of the movie is it's Ed Harris, and I think Ed Harris is Kristen Stewart's father, I think. Yeah. And so she gets involved with a female bodybuilder and who wants to be part of like the family business. And then shit goes sideways. It looks sexy. It looks dangerous.
weird.
It looks very weird. There's almost like Incredible Hulk vibe with the girlfriend's character. Anna, no, it's Katie O'Brien. So Katie O'Brien, who people maybe remember from Mandalorian. She was one of the former, Empire reformed people. She was also in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Was she? Who was she in that?
She was one of she was the alien badass freedom fighters.
Gentora. In Quantumania.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So she's done a lot. Oh, she was also a few episodes in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, okay.
She was one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who oh, her, she is both performers are queer. Both of them are queer. Katie I ran into at one of the conventions that we were at. Super nice, and was just is ready to make more queer shit. So I'm very looking forward to this movie.
Yeah, it looks fucking I love that we're in an age where when we were younger, right? It's ooh, there was one movie with queer characters and it's I have to see this movie. I love that we're in an age where sometimes they're I hadn't seen this trailer. I had heard about this movie. I didn't know the trailer was out till you told me it was out and I got to watch it. And I love that we're getting to get weird. It looks weird. Like you said, the thriller crime, but then also maybe Incredible Hulk, She-Hulk aspect. It's sure, add that in. Great. I love it. Give me more weird gay shit because I want it. I love that that scene is so weird when she's hulking out and it's wait a minute, but what are we doing here? But I like that. I like that it's throwing you off a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's truly the sense of that there are more stories out there than just coming out story or right. Gay bashing or conversion stories. Yes. Or there's a whole damn rainbow, people.
And those are important too, right? Sure. But it's we've done a lot of those. So I love that we're able to branch out more.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, those stories are well trod because, we're still, a lot of people are still having to do it, Yeah. So speaking of queer, let's talk about what's happening this week in queer. So we've got, this just came out. There was a study that was done from GLAAD. Part of their study, they realized that 1 in 5 gamers identify as LGBTQ+. Which, I mean, honestly tracks. I mean, as much as a lot of the straight cis bros try to take over and be the loudest voices in sort of quote unquote gaming culture, they're not. It's the vocal minority. Not minority. Yeah. I mean, it's that's still 4 out of 5. But they like to pretend that queer people and women don't exist in gaming, and that is
the women do. They got to have gigantic breasts and be scantily clad. Yeah.
Exactly, because this study also showed that less than 2% of video games have LGBTQ+ characters. This is an important metric because it shows that this is an industry that has a lot of queer people that are paying into it, that there is a large fan base, consumer in this community, in video games and just gaming in general, but that we are not being served by that same group. So, I mean, there's a reason why FlameCon has a gamer lounge, because there are so many gamers that are video gamers, tabletop gamers. We're geeks. We're used to being indoor kids, and there's nothing more indoor than video games. So,
and I mean, right? That's to to like pat you on the back. That's a reason in general why FlameCon does so well, and why especially 10 years ago, I can't believe it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago when it started, like y'all kind of like had the market cornered because there wasn't a lot of people like appealing to like LGBTQ geeks. And you know, I remember that first year it sold out that first year, didn't it? Like I remember it was so packed in what was the ballroom? What was it called? I forget.
The Grand Prospect Hall.
Right, Grand Prospect Hall. I remember us all sweating to death.
Yep.
And like, you know, I feel like it gets overlooked a lot, right? Like by these companies when it's like, no, there are a lot of queer geeks. We have always been here. It's just we are so used to being like, well, we're never going to get seen in any of this shit. So like, sure, I'll play this video game. Sure, this one. Or like, I'll read this comic, where it has to be more of an allegory than it is like explicitly queer. And it's nice that like in the last few years, people have been like, I don't know, like I know the study literally proves only, what is it, less than 2%, but we're getting those characters, and right, every time you'll see someone online being like, ooh, they're forcing it down our throat. And it's like less than 2% is not.
No,
that's not everything being gay now. Like
also like less than 2%, like you don't have a gag like that's a really bad gag reflex if they're forcing it down your throat with that, you know,
like we're pros, like give me a break.
Yeah. But I mean, like you can see that on Twitch. You know, there's a lot of like queer streamers on Twitch. You know, the study showed that, you know, as of November 2023, that it was less than 2% featured characters, and that the Nintendo Switch store had the lowest percentage of available games with queer characters and storylines, despite the fact that the data showed that Nintendo Switch consoles are particularly popular with queer gamers. 39% of queer gamers use Switch compared to 32% of non-queer gamers. So, I mean, part of that is, you know, part of that is because of cost. That it's, you know, relatively lower cost than like Xbox or PS5. It's also probably Animal Crossing and Pokemon.
Kevin, I was just about to say there is the Pokemon aspect.
Yeah. I mean, if you are a fan of Pokemon, there's a high percentage that you yourself are queer.
There really just is.
And if you're
we
not,
don't make the rules.
If you're not, you just haven't reached that level in your evolution yet. So, well, you know what? Before we wrap things up, we've got our clip of the week. Our clip of the week is for a new trailer called Femme. And so we were just talking about like seeing like storylines, more queer storylines that aren't just sort of like the basic narrative. And this, it's a narrative that has happened before in movies, where it's sort of like the queer bashing narrative. But this sort of takes it and sort of turns it a little bit more into sort of like this. It's not a revenge fantasy, but it's definitely like a revenge thriller where a Black queer either drag performer or gender non-conforming person, British, gets attacked by a guy who had previously been cruising him, essentially, or cruising them. And then the character deciding to get revenge by cruising them out of drag, and presumably shit happens. Don't know, but like, the mood of this trailer is just, it's so interesting. Like, I don't know, like,
I agree. I hadn't even heard of it till you brought it up, and it like, like we were just saying like, oh, we don't need those stories, but it does look different than your like, I don't know, like the fact that the guy was cruising this character, the guy who like gay bashes them, like does make it different for me. And like, it looks really well shot. It looks like it has like an A24 vibe to it almost. So yeah, I'm like very interested in seeing this now.
Yeah, it's a British thriller. It's a feature debut from the directing team, and it technically it came out last year, but that's sometimes what happens with sort of indie, especially like British films, is that it takes a while before it's available worldwide. I think it is available to rent or purchase on the various places that you rent and purchase movies. So, which I mean, I would love to see this kind of like in theaters. I think there was definitely like a period in my sort of young queer life, young adult queer life, where I would have just fucking eaten this film up. Just like, like I was a kid, I say kid. I saw Requiem for a Dream in theaters multiple times. Like, there was something definitely wrong with me. Yeah. No, I took my parents to see it. So yeah, definitely something wrong with me. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I celebrate the awkward. What can I say? I don't know. Speaking of awkward, let's wrap things up with our SHILFs of the week. It's been a while since we've done our SHILF. These are our superheroes that I would like to fuck, friend, or feature. Ian, who is your SHILF?
Excuse me. Mine is Joseph Quinn, who has been announced to be Johnny Storm in the new Fantastic Four. He played Eddie in Stranger Things. Everyone online has been really mean about this casting and like saying he's not hot enough to be Johnny Storm, which like cut to a year from now when he's done all the like steroids Marvel gives everyone and has the muscles, then they'll be like, ooh, now he's hot. And it's like, no, but he is hot. And I get very like sensitive about that. I'm like, you could say you don't think he's good casting, but being like, he's ugly just feels like just mean. Like it just to be like, he's not hot enough. Like, I'm like, what? But why is that a critique you're saying? I don't know. But also I do think he's attractive. I thought he was attractive as Eddie in Stranger Things. His like 80 rock aesthetic really did it for me. He's a good actor. I'm looking forward to seeing like what he does as Johnny Storm.
I agree. I think like, a lot of people had in their minds, they still were like, oh, Chris Evans and, the Michael B. Jordan, the past two people who have played Johnny Storm. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But also like, even pre that, like Chris Evans wasn't as stacked as he is now. Like he was not carrying all that cake before, So I truly believe Joseph Quinn can, make it to the bakery in time, like he has time. The movie's not coming out for like another year. I'm sure he has already been in training with this, it's going to be fine. My SHILF is for Mr. Daddy Fantastic himself, Pedro Pascal. There's a reason why he's the internet's daddy, and he is going to be the daddy to this Fantastic Four, and he can stretch beyond belief, and I look forward to believing it. So
same. Yes.
Yeah. And there was complaints. It's like, oh, is he too old? Or like people were like, oh, that they were longing for the past, the first Mr. Fantastic, which was Ian Carlos. And again, people were like, who? And you're like, exactly. Like,
right.
What? Ian Carlos did like one TV series. No, sorry, two TV series. One that was failed and terrible on CBS about him being immortal. That had the terrible. It was a long story. It was very bad.
I don't even remember that one.
I can't remember what it was. He was like immortal. Like he would like it, and he was like a coroner. Right. That was like the big thing. And then the other was like he was on Ringer with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah, which lasted one season. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I think we're fine with Pedro Pascal. It'll be fine. You'll be fine. You know what? It'll be better than fine. It'll be fantastic. So.
You said the thing.
I did it. Well, that is it for this edition of the Geeks Out podcast. You can find out more about FlameCon by going to our website, flamecon.org. Table registrations are going to be opening up starting in May. Not May, sorry, March.
I was saying, you just told me March. Do I have to change it?
Yeah. So both table and programming applications are going to open up in March. It's got to stop saying May. March 1st. If you have not signed up for our newsletter, I highly recommend doing it because you'll be among the first to find out such things about when tables are launching and when programs are going to be launching and discount codes for tickets and when special guests are announced. Like, there's so much that happens with the newsletter, so you don't want to miss out on these things. Also, like, special screening things happen through the newsletter. So yeah, who knows what's going to happen in the next coming months, so you don't want to miss that. You can also we have all sorts of great blog posts on the website of geeksout.org, and you can also stay tuned with everything going on the social medias, where we are at Geeks Out wherever you find your social media, and we also have a TikTok. That's right, we're joining the kids with our FlameCon TikTok account. So you can find out more by following us on TikTok. You may even find there may be some special discounts for FlameCon tickets coming out soon. So you may want to go tick the talk. I don't know. Pokemon Go to the polls. You can find me on the Twitters and the Instagrams and Threads and other places. Gilligan_McJew. Ian, where can people find you?
You can find me on all social media platforms at Ian X Carlos, and you can find my podcast Slayerfest 98 at Slayerfest X98 on all social media platforms.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ian. Thank you all for returning, for joining us on this Phoenix-like return of the Geeks Out podcast. I promise not to leave you too long until I speak to you again. And until next time, we're out.